Hello, hello.
Colby, you
Hey
didn't
guys.
move. You're lying. Same
Oh,
background.
still in, here, let me turn it off for a second. I'll show you.
I'm just kidding.
There we go. How's that?
Oh,
Oh, yeah,
I
that's
felt
funny.
better, hey? Yeah. Sorry about the time mix-up. That was complete stupid on my behalf.
That's good. I thought like I looked at the events questions, just like just jump in. That's fine. Okay. So I'm just gonna do a presentation on how to interview for maybe those who haven't interviewed in the tech industry, or you're about to start interviewing in the tech industry and it's nerve-wracking. I don't know how many people here have like interviewed for a larger company. Oh, hey, Philip. Okay. If I just want to know what kind of audience I'm getting. Uh, so Daniel, you said you've never interviewed in the tech
I
industry?
I literally like just graduated last month.
Okay.
So
Oh,
I'm basically like,
congratulations.
thank you. So I'm basically just like prepping now and
Mhm.
applying to a lot of places and yeah.
Okay, great. That's the list is perfect. So I was gearing this more to someone who's like in Daniel's situation. I do touch on like a little bit of what I've heard from people who are going for more senior roles, if that's anybody, but I will just, yeah, here's the agenda. I'll move this little thing so I can see. Okay, so I'm gonna, for those who haven't met me, I think there's only maybe one of you in here, but the interview structure that I experienced with Microsoft and with, I interviewed a lot of places before I was put into the apprenticeship program and then offered my full-time position. Um, so I have a bunch of funny stories of what I've encountered and some communication techniques that I think would help people like stand out in an interview process, and that made me stand out pretty well. And then just the mindset that I had going in, it's a bit like I'm an athlete, so I feel like it's just like kind of fun to go and interview for these places, and then like if they reject me, whatever, that's fine. So uh, not to take it for to heart. And there's a Will Weering, he's in our group. He gave me some advice as well, which I'll share and attribute to him. But yeah, just a intro if no one's met me. My name's Breann. I'm from Grand Prairie. I'm currently not an employee at Microsoft, even though we've said that. I'm currently just getting that all sorted out. My background check is waiting. So right now I am sitting here a little unemployed, but that's okay anyway. So hopefully I'll start January 31st. I got the position by joining what's called the LEAP program at Microsoft. They offer an apprenticeship for people with non-traditional backgrounds to apprenticeship with them and then get in. I also have the same qualifications as Daniel here. I have the diploma from Grand Prairie Regional College. That's me. And if anyone knows Franco, it's Franco and Brian. And I also have a Bachelor of Arts from the U of C, but that doesn't help me much these days. So okay, so I'll just go into what the interview structure looks like for maybe people who haven't seen it. Um, I will say it depends on the company. I've like seen it, I saw a lot of different ones, and it depends on who's your interviewer. The interviewer may decide they like don't give a rip about some stuff, and they really care about other things. Um, so the basic structure, you like of course introduce yourself. You don't just like hop in there and start coding right away. Some people will do a resume walkthrough, so they'll go through all your education, what you've put as your top skills and what you've put as like some technologies you worked with, what your jobs were, what your schooling was, what you've worked on. They'll go through your soft skills and they'll kind of evaluate that through the interview, or they'll ask you questions about your communication skills and or how you handle conflict, and they'll get you to name examples. And then, of course, there's like the dreaded technical evaluation, which if anyone's ever heard of it, it's like you're basically coding in front of somebody while they're watching you. In person, it'd be like a whiteboard. But now that we're in remote land, we have to like, they'll like, you screen share with them, and you kind of you just have to explain what you're doing, and they're going to watch you code and maybe give you some hints. So that's what you should be expecting. Also, as I was joking to Colby, that make sure you get the timing right when your interview is, just like how this was, because they might be in different time zones. So you want to double check that your time zone is not the same as them. I interviewed for a lot of Vancouver companies, so they were all like in whatever it is, PST, and we're in MST here in Grand Prairie. So we have to keep that in mind too. So kind of did a thing of like what I did in introductions. I usually got through the introduction phase, so that was good. So they're going to introduce themselves. And my biggest advice is some people, like from what I've heard and what engineers have told me, they'll be interviewing someone and this person will try and act like super smart or try and be someone that they are not, and they usually can tell. So just don't do that, and be honest, and you get a chance to kind of tell them about yourselves, like where you're from, what your hobbies are outside of tech, what side projects you've worked on, that kind of thing. So I think this is a good chance for you to be a memorable candidate rather than just somebody they've talk to and watch code. I think it's a good chance to show who you are as a person. Just some tips for the resume walkthrough. I've only had this happen one time, but yeah, so during our LEAP apprenticeship, we had a bunch of presenters come in. So a lot of this stuff is from them and from my experiences and from people I know who've been in the industry a long time and they've had this happen to them. So some interviews will go through your resume. And do not put anything you're unwilling, like you cannot answer questions about. So like, you watched a video on CSS or something, don't put CSS, that's just, I've heard some people say that they did that and then it was a problem because they don't know it. I wouldn't, yeah. So just make sure that you know what you're putting on there. And so if they do ask you questions, you can answer. Yeah, include your technologies, languages, and frameworks if you know any of them. That you've worked with. So for students like Daniel, like you, or someone who's trying to enter in, you would want to more put the languages and maybe things you used in labs rather, because you don't really touch on frameworks unless some programs do, but I know for a fact your program probably doesn't. Only put relevant work history on your resume. Like an example would, unless you don't have any, that would be the one thing. Put your last job. So like if your last job was working at Booster Juice, I guess just put that and then try and make everything look a little bit better. But you don't want to have no work experience. But if you don't have any, don't go rambling on what you got. And if you don't have work experience, I didn't have to do this because I was lucky work experience, but a GitHub is a really good idea to get going on and having projects. Like I said, I've never done this, but I do know it works from peers who've done it, and make sure those projects are, can show that you're working on stuff or like you're in progress. And if you don't have any code on GitHub or you have like one thing, don't put the GitHub link. Make sure you have like multiple so that it looks like robust and full of what they want to see. Yeah. So if you have like one practice lab, maybe don't give them that. Also, a link, this isn't mentioned here, to like your LinkedIn account, or if you have a website or a blog that you think they would be interested in, that's also a great way to stand out a little bit. So, yeah, so this was the biggest thing that was pushed on me in my apprenticeship was communication skills. I was really told that they were highly sought up after the industry. And the reason was like, a lot of us can code and do the basic programming, but to explain what you're doing and to document it properly so that when someone shows up, that they can take your documentation and go look at what you've done. That's very important because these big companies have code bases from 20, 30 years ago. They need the documentation there so someone like us can walk in and take it over. So they really, really pushed communication skills as a highly sought after trait. So if you can show that during your interview, I think that's great. I mean, that's not the only thing. This is just like my experience plus what the people who helped me with my interviewing had really told me. And yeah, this may be evaluated just throughout the interview to seeing how you talk to them, or it could be through specific questions that they might ask you. Like they might ask you like, oh, what's your greatest, I don't know, what's an example of when you wrote some ball in documentation? I don't know, something like that. That might be what they might ask. So then the next part is the technical evaluation, which usually takes the most of the time from what I've seen. And also, I should have said this, before you enter into an interview, sometimes they'll pre-screen you. So they'll be like, hey, can you do this 2-hour coding exercise just at home by yourself? And so you'll have to allot 2 hours, you'll start and there's a turn, and then you'll have to do this coding exercise. And then they may call you in for this type of interview that we're going through right now. So there's multiple stages of getting in. Some companies don't do that though. So In terms of the technical evaluation, there's 4 main types that I was like made aware of. First was your classic like algorithms and data structures. And it would be like to reverse a linked list, or I don't know, I'm trying to think of an example, sort an array of integers, like that kind of thing. Anything that would involve just that's pretty clear about what you're about to do and what needs to be done. Another one that I had a lot of mock interviewers do give me were vague and incomplete algorithms. So I had create the game tic-tac-toe, and that was it. That's all they told me they wanted me to do. There was also system design and architecture, and those are for more senior level roles. They'll ask you these questions like, how would you design an app like Instagram? Is that spelled right? Yep. And then work scenario questions that they will also ask, like describe a time where you've gotten in a conflict, where you had a design disagreement. For those who are in school or like looking for jobs now, it'd be like, you could think of things like in your labs. I don't know, when you got in a fight about robotics because you wanted to do something and your partner didn't want to do that. So that would be. So I just wrote tips that I was taught by someone who really helped me do my interviews. I won't say his name anyways. He's a senior software engineer at Microsoft. He did a great job of helping all get ready. So the first step for an algorithm is you have to make sure you know what your input and output types are and the constraints. So like, you know, it wouldn't make sense to handle a null edge case if your input's not going to be null, right? So, you know, you should make sure that their input's coming in, you know what it is, you know what type it is, and you know what the param, like how, like if it's an integer, you know how large it can get, or you know how small it can get, that kind of thing. So you have to clarify a return type. And sometimes, most of the time, they'll say, oh, like you pick your return type, it's fine. Just explain your choice, or like say if you're not going to return anything, or you are going to return, I don't know, a bool, make sure that you're saying why. Yeah. And if you are stumped by the question, this was one thing, just like talk it out. Just be like, okay, I know this, this, and this, and I would like to do this. And always try to find a working solution first. It doesn't have to be perfect and it doesn't have to be efficient. But you do need, it would be great if you could find one, because if you do find that solution and it's not the most efficient, at least you have time now to explain what you would do to make it more efficient rather than, yeah. So always try, and then if you do have time, hopefully you could always try to work to an O of N time complexity. And then you can handle edge cases. A tip that I was told was, if you don't have time for your edge cases, like you can always just put a comment, be like, hey, I'm gonna handle this edge case here, and then move to like the meat of the solution. And then if you have time, go back and actually write the edge case. That would be the best. Then that way you are always just focused on like what you need to do at hand. Duck ask for a hint. It's not very, some people get, you know, no one's going to be, I don't think, and judging that, you know, in the real world, if you're stuck, you ask your coworker, right? So I think that's a good time for you to show that you can ask questions and you can admit that you might be stuck. And then specifically for vague algorithm questions, which was helpful, like the tic-tac-toe game, the interviewer may have like in their brain, like a list of helper functions they might give you that they, like, if you call this function, this like made up one, you can just type it out. Then you can get A, B, and C that you actually need. An example would be like, oh, you want to check a paragraph for all valid dictionary words. Well, you don't have time to figure out how you're going to see if it's a dictionary word or not. That would be the time you would ask, is there a helper function that would allow you to see if it's a valid word or not? So that for those weird questions where you're not sure what's going on, you can always ask those questions about those helper things. I don't know a ton about system design architecture, but I do know we have people who have, hello, Minnie Phillips. Sorry, I can see it's kids in there. But if, yeah, this is more of like for a senior level. I would be surprised if they asked it in a junior, because of just like I've applied for juniors and I've never seen something like this. Yeah, just how you would design different products. So like database structures, if you would use an SQL database versus a no SQL database, you know, would you be using a web-based solution, mobile application, or you'd be both, that kind of thing? You know, how many servers would you need? That kind of, I don't know a bunch about this, but you can look it up. I've put a video at the end of this that you guys could watch, and your basic design principles that you learn in school or read online, you'll need to know, abstract, like all those 4. And like I said, these questions are normally from more like not senior, but like higher up positions. So I'll quickly go through communication techniques. I find communicating quite easy, but for some other people it's harder, and that's fine. Well, so I'll just say what kind of things have worked for me. So while you're doing your technical evaluation, it is important to tell them what you're thinking. So if you're quiet the whole time, they're gonna have like no idea how you think. They're just gonna think that you're sitting there going through, I don't know, they're not have no idea. So if you are stuck, talk about which data structures you would use to solve the problem. What's between, like, say, a set or a dictionary, what are the differences, and one or the other would work for that problem. Yeah, just make sure you're always telling them what you're thinking, because they'll be like, hey, what are you thinking? What are you thinking? Just help them out and tell them what's going on. You can practice this by I would talk to like inanimate objects, or you can help, like you can tell someone who doesn't know how to code, tell them how your problem, like show them your code and step them through it. Because if someone doesn't know how to code, you have to explain every line to them, right? Like for us, it's very easy to see what's going on, but for someone who has no idea what it looks like, they might not. Yeah, and if you're asked a technical question you don't know, be honest and tell them that you don't know. Like one time I got asked, like a long time ago, what's the difference between SQL and a no SQL database? Well, I didn't really know, but I've worked with SQL databases. So I told them what I did know about that, and that, took a while, and based on the name of no SQL, made a guess of what it was. And it was like mostly correct. So if you want, you can just tell them, and you do like, I don't know this, but I know A, B, and C. An example would be like, say you blank on a linked list, you're like, man, I have no idea what this is. Tell them you know what a graph is, or tell them you know what a dictionary is, or a set, or an array, right? That would help you look a little bit like you know at least the other things that rather than what they're asking. And yeah, if you don't know what a word the interviewer has asked, like say they're asking a question and you're stumped with one word that they've used, just be honest and ask the meaning. You don't want to make an assumption. You won't look dumb or anything. You just ask, because when you're reading documentation in real life, if you don't know what a word is, you look it up, right? So just do that, and don't use technical language you do not know well. My manager at my apprenticeship taught me that, like that specifically. He said he sees it a lot, so just make sure that don't use words you don't know, and make sure it's better just to explain something really low level than use like a word that you kind of understand. So, and I was like, always be confident and not arrogant. I feel like that's important too. Mindset and rejection. So just kind of how, on PowerPoint, if you click this designer thing, they give you sweet little pictures to go with it. So this is how that picture got there. So practice as much as you can. Like I said, I come from an athletic background, so I know that the more you practice, the more likely you are going to do well. So if you practice and practice, you'll eventually figure it out. So like for those, I'm sure everyone, or if you haven't heard of LeetCode, it's just like you can go on there and practice algorithms on their online IDE. Get someone who's in the industry or to mock interview you. I think that is the biggest one. Like that's actually the most helpful, because it's easy to just sit on LeetCode and whip out some, but to get like someone to be asking you why you're doing something, or ask you a question that would trip you up halfway through, you want to be able to do that. So we were really lucky in my apprenticeship. We had access to a lot of people who were willing to help. So I think I did like 3 a week leading up to my stuff, because I was terrified and also didn't want to mess up. So this was really helpful. Yeah, and like I said, practice telling someone who cannot code what your code does. That's really helpful as well. This is what Will taught me. He told me, he said, in our server, actually, I don't know if you'll watch this later, but he's a recruiter, and he looks at it like the more jobs you apply to in a numbers sense, the more interviews you'll get. You only apply to 2 jobs, you're not going to get 2 interviews most likely. But if you apply to like 300 jobs, you'll definitely get something. Like it's not going to be, and so you are going to get rejected. That's like a no-brainer. We will. And the reason is the person who's interviewing you knows what that company needs best, and maybe that's just not you, and that's totally fine. But there will be a company who would need your skill set, so just keep going. If you really want, you can contact recruiters on LinkedIn. I don't know, just message them and see if they have any open positions, or if you're interested in working on a company like specifically, just I don't know, message someone who works there on LinkedIn. So another thing is I bolded LinkedIn to say, go get LinkedIn, because I don't know, in Grand Prairie, we don't use it that much, but other places they use it a lot. So you'll want to do that. Here are some resources. Cracking the Coding Interview is the book I used to get into my apprenticeship. This is a good YouTube video. It's like a crash course on system design and how that would look in an interview. And these are the topics that I practiced going in, and that kept practicing as I was interviewing over a period of time. So I would say, yeah, if you practice recursion, it was really helpful. Actually, I know it's surprising, but I did a ton of recursion problems, and it helped in general with everything else. So that's my thank you. Yeah, that's it. Okay, sorry, I didn't know which one was last side. Sorry. All right, if you have questions, also I should have put a link. I think Leap, the apprenticeship I did to get my job offer, is taking applicants for Canada. So I will post that. I forgot. Sorry, guys.
Great. Thank you very much, Breann.
Yeah, thanks, Breann.
Did I rip through
thank
that
you.
fast enough? Good.
Yeah, you're very, very, very efficient. Do you mind posting those links in this, just in the chat there too? That'd be awesome.
Yeah, I'll go do that, because I don't know for sure, don't quote me, but go check and just like monitor it. Hang on, I'll go click on the software. They have a bunch of different, if anyone's interested in not software engineering, they have tons of things. They have like data analyst, business program manager, senior software engineer, user experience designer. They got lots. So I think this one looks like it is applying for Vancouver.
How long did you prepare for your interviews? Like after school?
Well, I was very lucky and landed a job right at the weekend after, because, oh, I also wanted to give this little tidbit of information, because I did a research grant, a project. You see me with Franco and Brian, that was what that was. And because of that, I was able, like through contacts, someone was interested in hiring me right away. So if you have opportunities like a research grant or to work for a not-for-profit for free, do those types of things, because they look really good on, like, I know you might want your summers off, or you want, you know what I mean? Just don't do that. Just take those things and just deal with, like, you know, it'll be worth it in the end. In terms of before I got into Leap, 4 months I was applying. Yeah, and I had about an interview I got quite a few callbacks, but a lot of people really wanted me to know JavaScript, and
yeah.
I don't really know it. So I didn't feel comfortable taking roles with that language. I put it in the chat, in the Zoom chat, but I realized I'll put it in the general chat.
Yeah, I think this will disappear after this meeting.
Okay, there you go. I sent it. So it's for the Vancouver location, but it is remote. So if anyone's interested about that program, I can tell you a little bit about it. But in terms of interviewing, it's about 4 months. It was for a lot of smaller companies. And just a heads up, if you ever end up being someone who needs to hire somebody for your team, I found it very frustrating, and you probably will too, if they're asking for a specific language that you may not know that well. Because if you know 1 or 2 languages, you can at least over time figure out another one. They all have the same basic structures. So like, yeah. And that means they're not willing to train you on something, right? Like if they're looking for a junior who like is a master at JavaScript, they might not be looking to train you. So you just have to kind of look. That's not as true. I was also told that by a really good friend of mine who's like, don't go for those ones. Go for the people who don't care which language it would be. So yeah. I posted it.
You find like a lot of people go into their first job without knowing the current stack of the company?
I did. I don't know. Anybody else here?
Yeah.
I got hired by a contact, so I didn't have to interview for that role. But I didn't know the stack of mine. When I got taken apprentice, I did not know. Yeah, I didn't know.
Yeah,
what we
and
would get.
like for me personally, like when I was hired at Panago, they were hiring for a React developer, which I think I would hire for a JavaScript developer, not a React developer. But you go into the job and then they're like, oh, by the way, like, do you know any Ruby on Rails? Because that's also like 90% of the code base. So it's
Surprise.
and then you learn more and more. Oh, there's so much Java and there's so much AWS and there's all this stuff, right? And that's everywhere because nobody wants to put. We have 30 years of legacy code that we still need to maintain, but we're doing cool new stuff. This is what we're hiring for. Haha. Everybody will do
Joke's
that,
on
right?
you.
So,
Yeah. We when I as an apprentice for my thing, we didn't know what our project would even be going in. So I didn't even know like what Microsoft product I was on, who my manager, I didn't know those things. I just took it and said, sure, like let's do it. And then I thought it was going to be React actually, and I was terrified. And no, it was C# so on .NET, so it was okay.
So you'd recommend practicing just algorithms over React a bunch?
Yeah, that's what I would do. I don't know what Colby says. Unless it's like, hey, we want a React developer, then obviously like make sure you know it. But for a junior spot, if you're looking for a big tech company, I would say focus on like what language you're most comfortable interviewing in. Actually, because I interview in Python, I don't even interview in C# or PHP, which are the two I've worked in.
yeah, I would definitely agree with Breann. I wouldn't focus on a framework. If I had to learn a framework, it'd probably be React just because it's so popular with companies currently. But I would mainly focus on if I was probably JavaScript if I was trying to do front end work, and honestly probably Java if I was doing backend, just because it's still so popular in enterprise companies.
It's everywhere.
It is everywhere. But I wouldn't focus on a specific framework, or I wouldn't spend all my time on the framework. Because I mean, we hired a guy at Panago that said he knew React, and he did, but he didn't really know JavaScript that well. And as soon as a bigger project came along, he kind of fell apart because he wasn't ready for like the deeper parts of JavaScript beyond like the hello world and React kind of thing. And I would have appreciated somebody who knew more like a deeper understanding of JavaScript, which we would have caught if we did a more JavaScript oriented interview style. But like Breann said, I would pick your language that you're most comfortable in and do all of your interviewing in that. And if 9 times out of 10, the company will like, yeah, that's fine. Just whatever works for you.
Yeah, especially Daniel, you'll be a junior spot, right? Like they should not expect you to know a framework, to be honest. I've
been practicing some React, but I've mostly just been like trying to master JavaScript. And I think I don't know. I'm still undecided if whether I want to interview in Python or JavaScript. I'm still better at Python, I think.
Yeah, whatever you're better in, I wouldn't interview in that.
Yeah. I use Python because it's just easier to rip something out, actually. Like that's like, you're not dealing with like compile errors. You can just do it. So,
yeah,
but
focus on the algorithm kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Are we still recording? Do we need to record the discussion? I don't know.
Yeah, we're still recording, yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah.
That needs to be good questions to have.
Yeah, if anyone has questions. I don't know.
I'm
just like a newbie. Oh yeah, what's up, Cole?
Okay. So in the context of, so like I don't have work experience, I have school experience. Do they necessarily care about what courses you take, or like kind of what you develop from those courses? Like if you have like one really good project from a course, do they care? Like obviously for you, like your first main job was you didn't necessarily fully interview for it, but like maybe other people have different experience as well. As like what are they looking at for people that are just like maybe recently graduated in the context of projects and like your like history at a school?
Yeah, because you're for university.
Yeah, Lethbridge.
Lethbridge. Oh, okay. Yep. That would change it. I think most. I could be wrong. Just correct me, Colby, if you have a different. Because Colby and I both have a diploma, so this might be like. Okay. Yeah, I could maybe direct you to someone who may know a little bit better, but my best guess would be most of the courses are standardized. You're expected to know like have certain levels of database courses, networking courses through your degree. So what you take from, yeah, like say if you did your projects or you had labs you were very proud of, I would say put those on GitHub because that's important, you know, or you did a project over the one summer like that you think would be relevant. Yeah, put those on GitHub. Let's show them those projects you've been working on. I think that's more important than what courses you've taken, pardon me.
Yeah, building off that, I did interview many people who were fresh out of school and had no work experience. And the only thing I look for was projects in that case.
Okay.
As far like some people you can always pull transcripts if you really need to, if there's no projects or you're kind of hesitant. But yeah, if you have a GitHub with projects on it, then that's perfect. That's what I go to instantly. And then that gives me a right out the gate. I know this person is not only trying because he's got projects on the side, but it shows they have some experience that they can put publicly forward. Because you can't really do that without work, right? So
Yeah.
projects are a great way to get into it like that.
Okay, thank you.
We got about 5 minutes left here in our meeting. Does anybody else have anything they want to ask Breann or anybody else in chat?
Yeah, Colby has probably more hiring experience than me. But I had like a lot of mentoring in terms of interviews and stuff. So
Yeah, this is
You
all
want to
really
do
great.
some
Breann.
mock
This is really
interviews,
good
Colby?
stuff.
Was that Danielle?
You want to do some mock interviews maybe in like a week or two?
Yeah, honestly, anybody who wants to do mock interviews, let me know. I'm
Colby
definitely
mock
down to do
interviewed
that.
me. Yeah, it was terrible. I did pretty bad. Cole, what was your question? Sorry.
I just said like the stuff you talked about interviewing, that was really really insightful. I really like that.
Okay. Yeah. It's very stressful. I sweat a lot. Sorry, like this is recorded, but just so people know, like I get so nervous interviewing. That's why I was like, you guys got to know this because it's so stressful. So, but
Yeah, and the thing you said about the numbers game, Breann, that is exactly right. Like I think I applied to probably 60 or 70 jobs before I landed mine. Like every
Yeah,
day
and
I
like-
just scroll through LinkedIn and I just apply, scroll through LinkedIn, apply. Like
yeah, just throw it out there. Like who
Mhm.
knows, right? Even if it's a job you're like, maybe not. At least you get a practice, right, to interview
yeah,
for them.
exactly.
So then when the job comes up you want, then you can perform in that interview loop. So, and most interview loops can have more than one round, by the way. Like, I should also say that.
Yeah, there's a place I interviewed at. I didn't take the job, but they were doing 5 rounds, and I was like, yeah, no, that's too much.
Yeah. If you ever do apply to Microsoft, they do 4 rounds back to back. Each are 45 minutes. So you just sit there for, yeah. I took a nap after.
Yeah, no doubt.
But yeah, because Cole, are you also looking for work right now too then? Or?
I am, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
A lot of people are hiring in the States. So just go hard. You'll find something.